is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
We are 1 week and 1 day away from the National Signing Day. Oh, there is a Super Bowl going on, and we'll even talk about that this afternoon. Welcome in on a day when the world woke up and found out that it had not come to an end because of a blizzard. It was bad, but it wasn't as bad as they predicted, which is always good news. We welcome you to the program. We'll get phone calls here very quickly at 855-242-7285. A number of guests talking about college football, the Super Bowl. Pat Dooley from Gainesville will try to get to the bottom of what the conversation was yesterday when that Rivals poll had the Gators 102 in the country. We'll try to separate fact from fiction from the man closest to the Gator program, Pat Dooley. Casey Smith, she is a reporter for ESPN. She's also spent a lot of time in College Station, and you may have heard they lost a Heisman Trophy candidate who didn't end up starting. They have another future Heisman Trophy winner, perhaps about to sign with Texas A&M. Sal Sunseri, he been part of a couple of national championships, one at Alabama. He also was with FSU when they beat Auburn. Now with the Raiders. A lot of jobs for Sal. We'll talk to him about developing players. Kevin Norwood knows a little bit about the SEC and knows a lot about playing in a Super Bowl. He'll join us as well. And it's Tuesday night, and there's some pretty important basketball games on. Alabama with a chance later to finally beat Florida and maybe prolong Anthony Grant's future, plus a couple of games here on the SEC Network. Tony Delk joins us as well. So quite a bit to discuss on this Tuesday, and looking forward to doing it. As I mentioned, we'll dive into calls pretty quickly here at 855-242-7285. I've been knee-deep in a couple of other things today. Missed Super Bowl Media Day. I assume everyone spoke.
Well, sort of, anyway.
Okay.
And I have a question with you regarding, many of you know Marshawn Lynch, the Seahawks running back. He sort of refuses to speak to the media. He was up there for his allotted 5 minutes, answering every question with, "I'm just here so I don't get fined." As a reporter, you've been in the industry for a long time. You develop a respect between an athlete and people that work in this industry. You give him a pass for the way he acts up there, or do you think it's disrespectful?
It doesn't bother me. I was talking to a former professional athlete the other day, actually a baseball player, played for the Yankees, and I said, what was you? We were making fun of, I think, A-Rod, who just can't win when it comes to the media. And he said, I let people know I will answer questions directly, and if I don't want to answer it, I'm not going to have anything to say. And I think that's what you have to respect. I never cared if someone didn't talk to me, because there was always someone else to talk to. And the one thing that bugged me as a reporter in a locker room was talking to someone and just listening to cliches. I mean, you don't need to go to the locker room for that. You can get that sitting in the press box. They bring you those quotes. So at Super Bowl Media Days, there's a million guys there. We've been to it at National Championship Media Days, and if Marshawn doesn't want to talk, what do I care? But to his credit, he gained a lot more attention today by doing that than had he actually talked.
And got a lot of notoriety out there for Skittles, if you will,
exactly.
in one interview, which has a lot to do with money. Let me ask you this. You think about Media Day, players all around. We've, on this show, had many conversations with coaches. You talk about, and what you mean is coach speak, I think.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
In the offseason, though, it's different. We have interviews on this show where coaches, you get them 4 or 5 months removed from the season, and people tend to open up. I think that's why the offseason on this show can be so fun.
Yeah, and I always get the question, not as much now as I used to, why don't you have certain coaches on? Because they don't have anything to say. And this is not, this is a program that we take seriously. We want compelling conversation. Yeah, there are some people that you take, whether they have anything to say or not because of who they are. But to me, it's a waste of time. And you can guess, there's some coaches I like very much that I have absolutely no interest in interviewing because I'll say, well, Coach, it's really great to have you on. Thank you. Coach, big game coming up tonight. What are your thoughts? Well, we're looking forward to it. It's just, what's the point? And there are some really good coaches, even in the SEC, who are just simply not going to say anything, and therefore, why waste their time and the audience's time?
Well, you know, though, how social media is today. These guys are guarded. I mean, the SIDs at all these schools coach these coaches up on what to say, how to say it. If you say the wrong thing in a certain environment, you're going to get torched for it.
No, and again, you know the reporters that you don't want your players talking to or your coaches. I'll never forget, early in my career, which seems like a long, long time ago, I was a beat reporter. I was at an Auburn basketball game, and this story was later related to me by a friend who overheard it. And I was in the locker room with this guy, and I mean, this team was struggling, and I was just hammering away at these rather unsuspecting players. And the next thing you know, the sports information director came in, the coach came in, the assistants came in, and what happened was someone came running out. It was the coach was Sonny Smith. He was the Auburn basketball coach at the time. In the middle of his radio show after the game, some guy came running up to him and said, hey, coach, Finebaum's in the locker room by himself with the players. I mean, it was like bedlam because, it wasn't so much an axe to grind. It was that my job was to get information, and I was getting it. And I didn't get it anymore after that, though. That was it. I had armed guards with me in the locker room.
And that's why I think a lot of your fans respect you for that. I mean, in this industry, you have two different options. You can throw softballs, or you can throw your four-seam fastball, throw a hard ball right down the middle. And I think you have to pick your certain spots, and you've been able to do that, and I think sustain that. Because if you're throwing hard balls, 24/7, I think some people within the athletic community, coaches, players, they'll get tired of that. But they understand at certain points you got to ask the tough questions.
Yeah, and I will say, as you evolve, this program is not about that like it perhaps it was when I was a newspaper reporter. I mean, we are trying to broaden the perspective, and during the football season, we had coaches on almost every week on Friday. A lot of them came by, and I mean, there's some things you're not supposed to ask. It's not a rule. It's not a law. It's just common sense. But you try to dance around very difficult and prickly subjects, and we do that. But you also do have an obligation to the audience and to the people that help set it up. That my belief is that we're in this thing for the long term. I made some mistakes in interviews. We had one last year that I still regret. We had James Franklin on, and I hammered him over about him stealing players from Vanderbilt. But I felt like I needed to. Has he been back? No. If he doesn't want to come back, big deal. But I felt under the circumstances it was news. We needed to ask him questions. And my feeling is if a coach doesn't ever want to come back, then that's his problem. We have a large audience here. People can hear this show throughout the country on a number of affiliates, on satellite radio. People can see this show on ESPN's SEC network. So if someone doesn't want to come on, then good. They don't have to come on. I don't mean to be flippant about that. I just mean to be truthful. But usually when something's not going right, they do want to come on. So that's how we feel. We try to be fair, and I think we are. James Franklin comes back. I'm going to ask him the same question all over again. Let's grab some phone calls here. Lance is next first up, actually, in Tennessee. Lance, good afternoon.
Hey, buddy. I'll tell you, it makes some common sense.
Lance, you there?
I'll tell you, yeah. You there, Paul?
Anything? Okay. I just want to make sure. Maybe I was listening to a rock station and not talking to Lance. How about Dylan in Ozark, Alabama? Hey, Dylan.
Oh, I'm only on this show, so I won't get fined.
I was about to send
Kirby.
Go ahead.
I heard that Kirby Smart was moving to a linebackers coach and that Alabama was hiring a new defensive coordinator. If that is true, I just want to get your thoughts on.
Well, first of all, that is not true. That is not true. What is true is that they've hired two new coaches. Kirby, there's some shuffling around, but Kirby will remain the defensive coordinator.
Okay. I also want to get your thoughts on being a bandwagon Alabama fan, Paul.
Okay.
During the season, whenever Alabama is doing great, you are just as high as you can be on Alabama. As soon as they lose to Ohio State, it's all downhill from there. you're trashing Alabama. You know, the dynasty is over. And Paul, I mean, I love watching your show. I love you and John. But you got to give Alabama more respect than that. I mean, they've won 3 national championships in the past however many years, and you just can't. As soon as they lose in the first college football playoff, I mean, they made it to the college football playoff. Out of 4 teams, out of all the teams in college football, they made it to the college football playoff. You cannot trash Alabama for losing in the first playoff game. And they've honestly probably had the worst quarterback that they've had in the last 10 years, and they still got there. So, Paul, I mean, I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, first of all, Dylan, that goes back to what we were just saying a minute ago. Number one, I've never said the dynasty's over. I think I was pretty firm on defending Saban after the Ole Miss game and continuing to predict that they would get to the national championship game. They didn't. They came pretty close, as you just got through pointing out. As far as me trashing Alabama, I don't think that's what I've been doing here. What I've been doing is been given an honest opinion of where I see the program. That's what I'm supposed to do. In terms of being on a bandwagon, that's not what we do here. We get accused of doing it all the time, but what we do is we talk about the events that surround our part of the world, and we comment. I thought Alabama's loss to Ohio State was devastating. I'm well aware, just like you are, of how difficult it is to get there, but I also put Alabama on a higher pedestal and a higher plateau than almost any other school in the SEC because of Nick Saban, because of the tradition, because of the expectations, and as we will talk about for the next 8 days, because of the fact that they're on their way to their 5th straight national championship in recruiting.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
During the commercial break there, we were chatting. Obviously, not all of you have heard this news. It didn't interrupt the weather coverage of the blizzard of 2015, but the University of Mississippi, the Ole Miss Law School, announced today that it has chosen its commencement speaker for May, and it's me. So we were chatting about that, and I'm sure we'll chat about it a little bit more as we get closer to May. But what's interesting is usually, John, you get these invitations after you do a lot of commencement speeches.
Well, congrats. This is your first one, right?
I've never given one before.
Well,
so
we'll see how it goes.
I'm usually supposed to, go back to your high school and, get the cobwebs knocked out, then maybe
elementary school,
a community college, and then maybe your own school. Actually, I spoke at my own school last year. But I grew up right up the highway from Ole Miss, and I'm really looking forward to it. And a big hotty toddy to all my new friends in Oxford. I did feel a little bit intimidated, though. You met, I think, Dean Gershon when we were in Oxford. But they, I was thinking about, I guess they're excited to have a football talking head. Well, in December, Supreme Court Justices Scalia and Kagan had a joint meeting with about 1,000 people at the Ole Miss Law School. It wasn't because they had planned. They happened to be in Mississippi. They were going to be in Mississippi hunting, and somebody found out and asked if they'd come by the law school, which they agreed to do. So I could just get Eli Manning or Bo Wallace to introduce me. It'd be great.
I'm telling you, what these kids want, they want to be entertained. I mean, you can pick from your list of people who give commencement speeches all over the country, right? I mean, I go back to my commencement speech. I had Ken Burns. I mean, how cool is that?
Ken Burns?
Ken Burns was at Penn State with me in the College of Communications, and he was entertaining. He told us about his career, his life, and it inspired me personally. And I think you'll do the same. I've seen you do speaking engagements. The chances that crowd and those graduates are laughing 90% of the time, pretty good.
Well, I look forward to it. Again, when I walked back from lunch a couple of months ago with Richard Gershon, the dean of the law school, I thought he was really intrigued to be with me until we got to the SEC Nation bus, and he met Tim Tebow. He forgot me like, oh, excuse me. Anyway, by the way, it was 4 years ago, yesterday we commemorated the anniversary of Coach Bryant's death 32 years ago. 4 years ago today, that would be 2011. 4 years ago today, the most famous call in the history of this show occurred. That call will probably be mentioned at that commencement. It was late in the show on this date in 2011 when a man named Al from Dadeville called us. Later, we found out that Al was Harvey Alman Updike.
Most famous call in sports radio history.
Indeed it is. And 4 years ago today, my goal today is to top that call.
We could try.
Let's try it. Let's start with Rich in Atlanta. How you doing, Rich?
Thanks for taking my call, Paul, but no thanks. I won't try. Hey, congratulations. That's an honor. Are you going to take calls at the commencement speech?
Yeah, we are. Yeah, I mean, we have not. I was waiting for Ole Miss to announce that. You know, we had that film room during the Sugar Bowl and the Iron Bowl. This will be the first commencement that we will actually take phone calls as you hear the pomp and circumstances and the graduates walk up and down. And by the way, the commencement is at the Grove, so you know there'll be a party afterwards.
Yeah, they'll be oiled up. Hey, Paul, yesterday we spoke about Arkansas's new offensive coordinator, and it got me thinking, in your opinion, who do you think will have the most impact of all the new coordinators in the conference this year? Off the top of my head, and everything in the equation, obviously recruiting, which is happening now, statistics, scheme, and obviously win-losses. Obviously, Muschamp would be the front runner, right? You would think he would be. But then what's intriguing is you have Chiefs going to A&M. I guess Schottenheimer got hired at UGA. You got Kevin Steele at LSU with Manny Diaz, right? Mississippi State. You got Nussmeier at Florida. Heck, I think Derek Mason's even going to be his own defensive coordinator, right? So, in your opinion, who do you think will have the most impact of all these new coordinators? And I probably forgot a couple, too.
Well, what an interesting question. Let me. Do you have an immediate reaction? I mean, I do think Enos at Fayetteville has a chance to impact the Hogs. I'd like to answer that once I know who the offensive coordinator will be at Tennessee, because I think it's going to be a school like that has. I mean, the cliche answer is Kiffin. But I'm looking for something a little outside the box.
What about Chavis at Texas A&M?
Yeah, I think that's a good one. That's interesting. I think Nussmeier, obviously it's
I have not voted. For some reason, I'm not voting on Nussmeier. I'm just not as optimistic that Nussmeier will have that big of an impact.
They can only go up, right? I mean, offensively.
Well, you would think. That's the conventional wisdom, but we'll find out in a few minutes. We're chatting with Pat Dooley from Gainesville and see what he has to say.
Right, and then you have Schottenheimer at Georgia, and there's going to be a new quarterback. That should be interesting. I think it's interesting.
No, it's a really good question.
Yeah, I mean, just one. I mean, obviously, again, Muschamp's the chalk horse because of recruiting with Auburn, but you have, I don't know how many I just named, but it seems like about 10 new coordinators in the conference.
No doubt. I mean, it's there's some. Yeah, I think probably without thinking too deeply, Muschamp would be the favorite to have the most impact.
Right. No, absolutely. But interesting. What do you think about Steele at LSU? I mean, because if you talk to a lot of the people, they're not necessarily, and Tennessee people will tell you this too, didn't necessarily love John Chavis. He wasn't as aggressive, if you will, as some would have liked. So
well, I mean, they may not have loved John Chavis, but I'm willing to bet you about a year into Kevin Steele's tenure, they miss John Chavis.
Well, we don't know that yet, right?
That's a prediction. That's not a fact. But
right.
That's what you were asking for, predictions, weren't you?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, Rich, right? You know me pretty well. LSU did not get an upgrade with Kevin Steele as a defensive coordinator over John Chavis. They had one of the premier defensive coordinators in the country, in my opinion. They don't have that now. They have someone who is respected as being a great recruiter, but I have not heard anyone in a while say, "Man, that Kevin Steele is a great coordinator."
Right. It goes back to Clemson days, right?
Yeah, well, he was at Alabama one year as coordinator.
Yeah.
He's been at Clemson. I mean, he's been a lot of places. He's been in the NFL as well. He's been around, but I think, and yeah, maybe some of it's just because we remember what he did last. But I think Chavis was a big loss for LSU.
Right. No, I agree. No, I on the surface. Certainly, and then Schottenheimer coming from the NFL.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you too, Rich. I'm officially not sold on Schottenheimer either. I'm somewhat. I think Schottenheimer. I mean, was a step down from Mike Bobo.
In what way? I mean, he comes from the NFL. I mean, he bring the NFL with him.
Rich, he was about to get fired in the NFL.
Really?
I mean, from what I could tell in St. Louis, no one was really sorry to see him go. They didn't. I guarantee you, they didn't make a strong effort to keep him. I don't think he was held in that high. I mean, these are just. I'm just giving you opinions.
Right. No, that's fine. I didn't know that.
People with whom I have spoken, there's mixed feelings on how good Mark Richt ended up with Schottenheimer.
That's interesting, and I didn't know that about St. Louis. But then again, if you look at their quarterback situation,
now, by the way, I'm not saying he would. I'm not saying Richie would have been fired. I'm just saying that
right.
he was certainly not setting the woods on fire.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Right now, we're joined by Pat Dooley. Talked to Pat not long after Jim McElwain got the job. There was a lot of enthusiasm. There was still some, how did he get the job, type of reaction. Today, there's a little bit of an overreaction in some quarters about the recruiting situation, and we'll try to find out what's really going on in Gainesville, and it's always good to catch up with Pat Dooley. What's up, Pat?
It's a gymnastics school here. I'm sorry.
You're right. Congratulations. I think the ladies can go all the way this year, don't you?
They're pretty good, although they lost one of their best gymnasts earlier, but she should be back at the end of the year. But, it's funny. During football season, people were saying, when's basketball start? And now during basketball, everybody's saying, when do baseball and softball start? Because it's been – I tweeted this the other day, Paul, worst football-basketball combo since 1989 at Florida. So it hasn't been a good September through end of January for Florida fans.
No, it hasn't, and to say the least, tonight in Tuscaloosa is a really critical game for both programs. Maybe a little more critical for Alabama because it hasn't beaten Anthony Grant. Of course, he used to work with Billy, as you well know, and that's certainly been a major obstacle as Grant's future is hanging in the balance. Billy Donovan doesn't have too much to worry about. But let's move on to recruiting. And there was a little bit of a reaction, maybe overreaction here, Pat, when we started talking about the Gators. But what is the situation right now with 8 days to go before National Signing Day?
Well, it's not going to be a great class. The difference between this class and maybe the classes of going back to the last four coaches, Spurrier, Zook, Muschamp, and Meyer, is their classes actually were ranked in the 12 to 18 range and turned out to be bad classes, whereas this one is going to go in looking like a bad class, and we'll see how they develop. But I wrote a column about this a couple of weeks after McElwain got the job. Don't expect much, and I detailed of the 58 players signed by Muschamp, Meyer, and Zook, 27 of them left the program or were booted out of the program. And that's what happens a lot of times to first-year coaches is they have to take some chances. They haven't developed relationships. And I talked to Charlie Strong about this. He said his first-year class at Louisville was a bust. And that's I think there are exceptions now to it. But I think that certainly for a lot of coaches, they struggle, especially when you go and hire a guy. And you know, Paul, these high school seniors right now don't know who Jim McElwain is when he's hired, okay? They aren't following Colorado State football. And when McElwain was at Alabama, they were in 8th to 9th grade. So to them, it wasn't a home run hire, and you got to build up these relationships, and it takes a while. If their second class is bad, that's when they're going to have a problem. I'm not surprised the first class is not going to be great. Maybe I don't think anybody expected it to be where it is right now. But again, it's a long way from over, and rankings tend to be a little bit overrated anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that is true, but, you also know, Pat, there was not universal acceptance when McElwain got the job. I was really impressed, but I had some people telling me, "Hey, slow down, calm down." But is there any concern that he'll get nabbed, or that there'll be this imprint that he's off to a bad start? I know that may not mean anything if he wins football games, but perception does matter sometimes.
Absolutely, and I think that is something that you're right. I mean, it's going to at least be perceived that way. I think his hires seem to be really good hires. I mean, everybody seems to be very impressed with the guys he brought in here as assistant coaches. But, if they end up being the 50th ranked class in America, they could still rally and make it a top 20 class. But that's not going to bode well. Now, the other thing is, Paul, we have no idea. You know how these silent commitments where I'm not a big fan of recruiting, okay, as you can tell. Silent commitments, quiet commitments. Do you flip guys that really were never flipped in the first place? They were going there all along. It's kind of a game that's played with coaches, so they may come on strong there at the end. But, it's going to be hard for them to really make a big dent this year in this class. And I think you guys talked about this yesterday. Part of the reason is the head coach who had recruited these guys and his number one recruiter, and Tavares Robinson, went to another SEC school and recruited against him. Now, they're within the rights to do that as long as Auburn was recruiting those players previously. That it's kind of an imperfect storm for Florida in those regards.
I want to ask you about that because Jeremy Foley has the reputation as the smartest man in the room, and I'm right there with the next guy, agreeing and nodding my head. But was there anything? He praised Will on the way out, so did the president. Is there anything else he really could have done, having heard what you just got through saying? As long as Auburn's recruiting these players, there's not much Florida can do about it, is there?
Not by the contract and not by the agreement that was made. Now, if he went out and contacted a player that Florida was recruiting and Auburn wasn't, he'd be in violation, and then he would forfeit all the – I don't know, I would assume all the money, maybe just part of the money that he is still owed. Obviously, the big buyout that he got to leave here. So, and again, you'd have to prove that. You might have to even take that to court. I don't think that's going on. I don't really know. And again, it was a very hard firing for Jeremy Foley, maybe the hardest one he's had since he's been at Florida, and he's fired a bunch of people. He was really good friends with Will, and I think that's why you saw the effusive praise at the getaway press conference. And part of it is they brought him in here and said, hey, clean this program up. We got a mess here. And he did. And but as you know, Paul, graduating players and keeping them out of jail isn't enough to keep your job. You got to win football games, and he just didn't win enough.
Pat, on a different subject, and we talked about this years ago when Will Muschamp took over for Urban Meyer. You were very close to Urban Meyer, and it was bad enough that Will Muschamp struggled replacing him. But what has it been like these last 3 weeks in Gainesville, watching Urban Meyer from afar do what he did in Gainesville?
Well, I've actually talked to Urban a couple of times since then, and I still like Urban. I'm in a minority, I think, among people down in this area. I think there are still a lot of people who have good feelings about him, but the Gator Nation, I think for the most part, and maybe it's a vocal minority, I'm not sure, but are pretty upset still with him. I mean, they're mad at the way he left more than anything, and the fact that Muschamp has made sure everybody knew that this program was broken and that Urban told him that when he left. And I think Urban, I can tell you, it doesn't feel that way now, and is kind of, I think, taken aback by how much negative talk there's been about his tenure here. And I think he's blown away by a lot of it. Now, you can't do what he did and not expect to get some negative feedback. You can't leave and then your press conference when you're leaving say it would be a tragedy for me to wear anybody else's colors, and then go coach in another school 8 months later. And not expect some blowback. You're going to get some. But I think more than anything, and I wrote this in the column and after the game, I actually wrote a live column off TV. I wasn't lucky as some people to be there for that game. But I wrote a column saying, look, everybody keeps saying Gator fans need to get over it. No, they shouldn't. It should sting. It's like you have a girlfriend who says, it's not me, it's you. Or it's not you, it's me. And then she goes off and finds a better-looking girlfriend or another girlfriend that you think is just as good-looking as you. And then, and all of a sudden they're getting married. It's going to sting, Paul. I mean, you know that. And so if it quits stinging, you quit caring. But I think Gator fans certainly at some point just got to understand that this is the way things worked out, and it's just the way life is. Look, if Urban Meyer had walked out of the 2008 post-national championship press conference and said, I'm taking my talent to Tallahassee, he's within his rights to do that. It's not like it's against the law to go coach somewhere else.
It's interesting because Spurrier is popular in Gainesville. Urban is not. Years from now, how will Will Muschamp be remembered?
Well, I think the fact that he's at Auburn probably, there's certainly going to be some negativity about that. But again, they don't play Florida until whenever. I don't even know when it is. It's not for a while. But the fact that I don't think he was thought of that well when he was here. So you certainly have a group of people who really liked Will and really thought he got a raw deal. Now, I liked Will, but I didn't think he got a raw deal. I thought after the Missouri game, and this goes back to, Paul, the recruiting issue. The LSU game, I mean, he's on the hot seat coming in. They've got a pretty good class they're still putting together for this 2015 class. And then they lose that game to LSU. Now the hot seat's getting warmer, and then the Missouri game happened, and everybody knew he was gone. The only thing he could do is win out. That's the only way he could save his job. So at that point, all the recruits said, that's it. Nobody's committing to Florida. So they lose those early commitments. And if you remember back when Urban left, he had already put together his class. It was ready, and Will came in and basically honored all those commitments, and that's where their class came from. Now, that class, I think 8 of those guys never really played for Florida. But that really hurt Florida, too, in that all those guys. And then when they named McElwain the coach, several commits that were fairly high-level commits dropped off and decided to go elsewhere as well. So, and I don't think that was an indictment on McElwain. I think it was just like, well, you didn't hire Nick Saban or Bill Belichick, so I'm going somewhere else.
Good stuff, as always, from Pat Dooley. The complicated nuances of former Florida coaches continue. Pat, be well. Talk soon.
All right, good talking to you, Paul.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
I'm SEC recruiting analyst Derek Tyson here for your Paul Finebaum Show recruiting update on South Carolina. The Gamecocks are working on their 7th straight top 25 recruiting class and currently have the 15th best class in the country. South Carolina has 29 commitments, including 5 which are ranked in the ESPN 300. 11 of the Gamecock commits are ranked 4-star prospects, and the other 18 commits are ranked as 3-star recruits according to the ESPN rankings. South Carolina has 6 junior college commits, including the number 1 and 2 ranked junior college defensive ends in the junior college rankings. With their experience, the junior college prospects should provide immediate depth next fall. The offensive and defensive line was an area of concern after losing several starters to graduation last year. The Gamecocks have 7 defensive linemen and 4 offensive linemen committed, and the offensive line is still a priority heading into National Signing Day. The Gamecocks have an incredible 23 commitments from out of state, including 9 from Georgia and 4 from Florida. With limited scholarships available, South Carolina can only add a few more prospects to their 2015 class.
There you go. South Carolina off and running. Can Spurrier turn it around? Looks better than it did a few weeks ago when he wasn't sure what bowl game they were in.
I'll tell you what, I've learned one thing the last couple of days from Derek. And this has come up on the show, don't get me wrong, but my goodness, there's a lot of football players in Georgia. I mean, every single program in the East is just littered with talent from Georgia. You have to think that's going to help the East at some point, don't you? I mean, come back and get on the same level as the West. I mean, don't kid yourself with that bowl performance. The West right now is the stronger division.
Yeah, no. Well, first, Georgia's a big state, and not only is it a big state, they take high school football seriously in Georgia. I mean, you've got some programs, down in Valdosta, the program Colquitt County where Rush Propst is. I mean, it's a way of life. And I know people say, well, of course it's a way of life. Well, not everywhere is high school football the center of attention at all times. It is in Georgia, and that's why they produce great coaches and great players.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
National Signing Day is 1 week and 1 day away. And we thought we would talk to someone who has recruited at the highest levels among the schools in recent years. He's been part of a national championship at Alabama, won at Florida State. Sal Sinceri, of course, now with Oakland, and always good to catch up. I think the last time we chatted with Coach Sinceri was the day after Florida State beat Auburn. He was with Florida State last year as they made another run at a championship. Coach, thanks. It's always good to catch up, and I hope life is good.
Everything's good. It's great to talk to you, Paul. It's been fun. The last 2 years where I was at doing it, we came short this year, but, coming out here to Oakland, being with Jack Del Rio is really unique. I think like anything else, the last time we were together, we went into Carolina and they were 1-15, and now coming out here and the next thing you know, we turned that around. Carolina made them a contender, and plan to do it out here in Oakland.
I would imagine that it is going to be interesting, and certainly many best wishes. I do want to talk to you a little bit about recruiting from a general standpoint, Coach, because you've been there. You were there until recently. You know what that final week is like. We were just chatting about a player in Texas who committed and then is not so sure. As a coach who was considered one of the top recruiters in the country, what is this final stretch like?
Oh, it's really stressful because you got to make sure all your I's are dotted and all your T's are crossed. You got to make sure that you have total communication with the recruit. Not only do you have total communication with the recruit, but if you're lucky enough to have parents involved, that you can't let a stone be unturned because you don't know who's working in the opposite direction until you get that signature, Paul. You know as well as I, and nothing's guaranteed.
I mean, Coach, you sound like you're still recruiting, all uptight. I guess it's not easy to walk away, is it?
No. Well, the bottom line is that I know that when I was fortunate enough to get a guy in at mid-semester, but during that time prior to him getting there, being in school and all that, you're a nervous wreck. Who's trying to work behind the scenes, to sway him to change his mind, keep him close to home, and it's hard. But when you're in the big-time programs and you're going across nationally, and this guy's got to cross a lot of states to come to your school, it is very, very tough. And believe me, nothing's ever that easy. It just doesn't happen that way, especially if he's a dynamic player.
You mentioned early enrollment. I would think that makes it a little bit easier, and that's something that we see a great deal of. Talk a little bit about that step, and where do you go? I mean, there's certain limitations. You can't talk a little about how that works.
It's all based on how many scholarships you have available during, the second semester. But then what happens is you got to make sure that this kid meets all the requirements of the NC2A. He's got to get a graduation diploma early. It's a lot of steps that have to be taken care of. He has to be accepted into your school. But most of the time, as the kid, going into his junior year, if you have somebody who's good with the compliance department, the admissions, and then you can let this guy know exactly what he has to get done, then it really works to your advantage. You take him away from this last 6 weeks push where all the negative recruiting comes in, all the bashing comes in, and you're defending yourself, and that's what really goes on. So let's not kid ourselves. Don't think that, if a young man's going to Alabama and other people are recruiting against him. There's all the stuff. Well, he's going to Florida State. He's going to Ohio State. Why you want to go there? I mean, you're battling all the other enemies out there, and meanwhile you're sitting there saying, you know what? We've been honest to you the whole time. Let's get this thing done. But these last 3 to 6 weeks have been really, really hard in recruiting.
Coach, let me ask you, because you've been at some of the top schools in the country, which we've identified that are known for 5-star athletes. But when you're recruiting at another school, and you've been across the board, how tough is it? You don't have to name any names, but as you get close to signing day and you're getting more turndowns than you are acceptance, I'm sure. But you have to put on a good face for your fans and for yourself. What's that like when things are going badly?
Well, it's not very good because you want to finish strong, because the last 3 or 4 guys always take your class and either elevates it or drops it. And that's the thing that drives you nuts, is because, and they're good football players, these last 3 or 4 guys might have an opportunity and a good chance to come in there and help you on your team, whether it's special teams early or whether a guy will just go in there and be able to learn the system and get done what has to get done. But when it comes down to it and you lose those last 2 or 3, everybody says, well, it's okay. And everybody thinks their recruiting class is great. I've never known of a class that hasn't been good by a coach. But the bottom line, internally, you know what you have to do to get the last 3 or 4.
I do want to ask you, because we were talking right before you came on about the University of Florida. You were obviously recruiting against them at FSU, right. But McElwain's in there. You obviously know Coach McElwain. You've worked with him. It's been tough for him to get things turned around, partly because Will Muschamp went to Auburn with one of his top assistants, and they're getting a lot of key players. So do you have any sense of the Florida program? I realize you were competing with them, but I am curious.
Here's what I do know. In the recruiting process, usually these relationships are built on, a lot, maybe 1 or 2 years. So with Will being down at Florida, he's had good relationships with kids that he's been recruiting. Max coming in there from Colorado State, which, is tough duty because he's trying to develop a relationship within 2 or 3 weeks. And remember what I just said, it's been a 3-week relationship instead of a 1 or 2 year relationship. These kids get bonded, they're on your campus, they know what you're about, they like talking to you. It's tough times. But, that first year going in there, your recruiting class normally isn't going to be as great as you want it to be. Now, that second year where you had a year to work on that prospect and get into his school, let him see you so he knows, puts a voice with a face, it's all going to change. But it's tough. I don't care who you are. When you have prior relationships with kids and you leave and go somewhere else, these kids feel like a little bit of a bond and they trust you. So it's a matter of Mac getting a chance to get that trust into that, to these kids and let them get this thing straightened out. But I know Mac, the way he works and what he's all about, he'll get it done.
Coach, next Tuesday night and Wednesday, you're going to kick back and relax, not having to worry about looking at your phone every 3 seconds?
You know what, Paul? This has been the greatest thing for me. I haven't had to jump on a plane, sit in the middle seat, be next to a guy that's big as me, get off the plane, sweating, wondering if this kid's going to be where he needs to be, and I'm going to meet him and everything else. So to answer your question, I am going to sit back, relax, and just enjoy my Tuesday and my Wednesday, especially of getting up early in the morning and waiting and watching a fax machine. Do you know what it's like to look at a fax machine and it ain't rolling, bro?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Coach. Where you've been lately, it's actually pretty good because you've been in 2 of the top places. Listen, don't relax too much. While we're enjoying the NFL draft in early May, you're the one that's going to be sweating.
That's okay, because you know what? I'm going to have these guys rated. And if he's at that spot where we can take him, I'm going to take him. If he's not, I'm moving to the next one. You know, they don't have a choice. You know what I'm saying?
No, it's a little bit different. And then you let the head coach and the GM worry about the media after that. Hey, listen, it's been great to catch up, and it's been really a different view of what so many of us swim in every day and don't really understand
Well,
like
you
you
know,
do.
the unique thing about this, and I'll let you go, is this, and I really believe this, is, you know, it's not just about the player being the 5-star. It's about the player being the 5-star and getting developed mentally, physically, you know, and getting and being taught football. A lot of these guys come out of a lot of programs. They think they understand football. They think they know what's going on, and they really don't. So the development of the coaching staff, the development of the organization, you know, these kids all have problems, and sometimes these kids need to talk to you other than just football. So, you know, it's critical to have, you know, a program in place, which are both places that I had this, that these people have other alternatives to talk to other than just football. And it's critical as far as leadership, as far as there's problem solving at home. I mean, you've got to have a relationship with kids, and these kids got to trust you. And that's the uniqueness that I found out of it, is that when I recruited a guy, I wanted them to know that I was there. I wanted to be there more than just being a football coach. I wanted to help him out to make sure his life at any university was going to be good academically and athletically. And in today's world, our kids need that, because a lot of these kids don't really understand the work ethic that has to be done to be successful, and the entitlement is not what it's all about. So you got my preacher. I preached to you about that, Paul, but I think it's really important.
Well, great stuff. We could go on all day, and next time we will. Thanks, Coach.
Bye, buddy.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
I'm SEC recruiting analyst Derek Tyson here for your Paul Finebaum Show recruiting update on Missouri. The Tigers currently have the 26th best recruiting class in the country and are on pace to land its third consecutive top 40 recruiting class under Gary Pinkel. Missouri has 21 commitments, including 3 which are ranked in the ESPN 300. 9 commits are ranked as 4-star prospects, and the other 12 commits are ranked as 3-star recruits according to the ESPN rankings. Offensively, the Tigers have met many needs. Missouri has a commitment from an ESPN 300 quarterback and commitments from 4 running backs and 4 wide receivers. The Tigers also have 4 junior college prospects committed who could provide immediate depth in the fall. The Tigers have done most of their work out of state. Missouri has 14 commitments from outside of Missouri, including prospects from Louisiana, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Mississippi, and Oregon. Missouri still is focusing on the defensive tackle position as signing day draws near.
We are back and talking about Mizzou, and Missouri's always one of the more interesting recruits. You know, they've done well with less. How are they going to do now with more? 9 4-stars by the year, and this is their best year in a long time. Of course, they did have DGB a couple of years ago, not for long, however, but this is a sign of the times for Mizzou. And when they were in the Big 12, they didn't get 4 stars. In the SEC, they had 3, 4, 4, and 9.
Yep. You took the words right out of my mouth. So I was going to call it the SEC effect. You have success in the SEC. Put your program on the platform that is the SEC championship game and sell that to recruits on the trail. They're going to sign the dotted line.
Is that what Missouri wants, though? Do they want to be known as big-time recruiting? Then if they get all the good recruits, though, can we hear this? I think Gary Pinkel does a lot with 1 and 2 stars. I bet deep down Gary wouldn't mind a few 4 and 5 stars. He looked okay with DGB in the brief time that he was there.
Wouldn't mind it. I mean, it's so nice to have the reputation that you take 2 and 3-star recruits like Dan Mullen does and build them into solid football players. But wouldn't it be nice to just have that guy as a freshman to begin with?
And that kind of reminds me of our own show. And we used to make a living on 1 and 2 stars, and we became the best show in America. Now that we're getting 5 stars here at ESPN, show sucks.
No work ethic.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Lance is up next. Lance, good afternoon.
Hey, Paul.
Hey there.
I told you yesterday Tim Tebow's the most efficient passer in SEC history. That wasn't an opinion. It's a fact. You can look it up. He's number 1 SEC, number 3 NCAA every time. That really pisses me off. I'll tell you what. He said, hey, that's what saying is a great coach. That's because he's never had a Steve Spurrier 11-1 against Georgia. national championships. He's never had a reminder. 5-1 against Georgia, 2 national championships. Do you realize we won 2 national championships since Georgia's won an SEC championship, Paul?
You're talking a little too quickly for me. What was that again?
Tim Tebow is the most efficient passer in SEC history.
Yeah, I mean, I know all that.
It's not an opinion, it's a fact. He's number 1 in SEC and he's number 3 in NCAA.
Okay, yeah, I'm really pretty well versed on Tim Tebow.
Well, yesterday you and Darryl had a pretty good laugh about it, and I'm going to tell you right now, Darryl's an idiot. He don't know nothing about football. The man, I'm going to tell you right now, he seems to go 7-5 right now, and he said there ain't no such thing as a great coach. That's because he's never had a Steve Spurrier national championship. And you realize we won 2 national championships since Georgia's won the SEC, and he would have called me and run his mouth about Florida and Jim McElwain. Ain't nobody scared of Mark Rickey's average, son. And don't worry about finding a better coach. James Franklin would be the answer to that. But you can always get both leaning to replacing Paul. 9-3, no championships. That's your man. Average Georgia man. Jarhead, son. If you ain't Gator, Gator Day.
When did Darryl become a Tennessee fan or a Florida fan? I mean, what is that guy talking about? Charles is next from Reeltown. Charles, what is going on, my man?
I don't know.
I never thought I would be this happy to hear from Charles. At least I understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, I ain't heard nothing. Old Jim said. That last guy neither. Old Jim calls in every day. He's calling in the best sports show.
Charles, what did you think about Jim's comments about the fact that we have no audience, we have no show, that it has derailed, and if I'd stayed in the car with Jim, we'd be number 1 right now.
If you'd have stayed in the car with Jim, you'd still be in Birmingham. Straight Jacket Jim don't know nothing. He's a wannabe, can't be, never will be a Charles from Reeltown. You stay with Charles from Reeltown if you want to stay where you at. You go, Jim, he calls in, he says he's a compelling, poignant caller. He's a compelling moron is what he is. That's why he's in a straitjacket. He calls in every day. He talks about himself. He brags on himself. He's got a big ego. That's all he's got. What he needs to do is call in and talk about sport. He's the greatest hitter since Ted Williams. He's a great football player, great golf, tennis, you name it. He calls in and never mentions sports. He don't know nothing about it. He's a lying moron, and he's a phony. He's a phony as all straitjacket Jim. That's all you are. Let me tell you something else, Paul Finebaum. Alabama's going, you say they're going to win a national championship in recruiting?
Hold on a second, Charles. Somebody wants to talk to you.
I don't want to talk to that compelling moron. Compelling moron.
Jim, you there?
I'm going to steal the floor, steal his old ignorant thunder. He's got no thunder, he's got no liking, he's got nothing but an old feeble brain with nothing in it. He always calls and tries to put me down, and he's nothing but a lame-head old man with nothing. He ain't got nothing.
You want to be champion? Never will be a Charles Reeltown. You ain't got it in your old straight jacket. Can you name me 3 Alabama football players? Do you folks know something about sports? Tell me something about sports, you moron.
Never seen.
What do you know about sports? What do you know about sports? All you know about is that straight jacket you wear.
Hey guys, Charles, slow down. I mean, we can't have 2 people talking at once.
Well, they won't shut up. Talk, and then I talk, straight jacket.
So inferior when my calls come in. That's the way it is, Charles. When I call, you are not even on the list. You're not even on the list, Charles. Ask Paul.
Man.
Read the book, Charles. Read the book, you old dumbass. Read page 54 in the book,
54, page 54.
Why don't you talk about sports, Jim? Why don't you talk about sports? You calling the top-rated sports show in America, and you don't know nothing about sports.
Oh. Tell him. Paul, tell him the score.
59 to nothing. You don't know the score.
59 to nothing, you old feeble brain.
Paul,
59 to nothing. Page 54 in the book.
What do you know about
sports? Page 54, you old brain dead
moron. Page don't mean nothing. Them just words. I'm talking to you. I want you to tell me what you know about sports.
54, Charles.
Can you name me 3 Alabama football players?
59 to nothing.
You don't watch sports because you don't know nothing about it. You've never played sports. You're nothing but a bragging Alabama moron. You're nothing but a straitjacket Jim. That's all you are. That's all you never will be. You never will be a Charles Reeltown. You know it, and I know it, and Paul knows it.
I got no more, Paul. What can you say to a feeble-minded brain like him? Nothing. Nothing.
Your time is coming past, Jim. Why don't you hang up before you embarrass yourself?
You're an old man. Why do you embarrass yourself like this, you old brain dead?
I talk about something. You start on it like you started. I started calling you. I said, you embarrassed yourself. All you can do is say, oh, why do you embarrass yourself? You just copy me, Jim. That's all you do.
Breathing on you. Marcus can kill you. Breathing on you, you moron.
You the one's a moron.
You ignorant moron.
You're a straight-jacket moron.
Dumb
Tell
moron.
me something about sports.
What else can you say to this
What do you
feeble-minded?
know about Alabama? Do you even know who coaches over there?
What's that, Jim?
Harvey to call back in. Do something. Get this brain-dead idiot off there. Please.
Name me 3 Alabama football players, Jim. You should know the whole team.
Think you are to asking me to name you 3 Alabama football players. Who do you think you are?
Name me 3.
Guys, everybody had enough? I mean, we feel better? Okay.
Good night.
He couldn't name me 3 Alabama football players.
Charles, Jim could name you a million Alabama football players.
Jim?
Yeah.
He had his chance. Why didn't he do it? He could
You're fighting from a moron. That's why, you moron.
You are a moron, Jim. I thought you were gone, you old moron.
You're a wannabe that's nothing.
You never will be a Charles real down. You jealous of me, Jim. I'd won call of the year. You ain't never win call of nothing.
And you're nothing.
I won call of the year. Have you?
Charles, Charles. I mean, Jim is speaking lucidly,
He's speaking
articulately. Articulately, is there such a thing? No, you got me making up words here. Charles, slow down. Let's talk. I mean, you're screaming.
Looking back at him, Paul.
I wish I had stock in the word moron right now.
Well, you ain't talking to one, but Jim is one. I tell you that.
He's a psychopathic hick.
You can't.
He's a psychopathic old hick.
What do you know about sports?
Psychopathic old hick.
About Ted Williams, Jim.
Okay.
I've forgotten more about sports than you've ever dreamed, you old motherhead.
What was Ted Williams' lifetime batting average?
I don't know anything about Ted Williams, you old moron.
344. You didn't know that, did you?
No, I don't know that.
You don't know nothing about sports.
I'm not like you, Ted Williams. I'm not 80 years old like you old moron.
You don't know nothing about sports, Jim. I've done called you out and proved you don't know nothing about sports.
Okay, as much as entertaining as someone in America may find this, we do need to thank both of you so much for calling.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
John Calipari knows how to turn around a program. He's done it pretty much everywhere he's ever been. He joins us. The Kentucky coach joins us just after practice. Coach, thanks for the time. I hope your life is peaceful, although I doubt it.
I don't know if you're coaching Kentucky if it's ever peaceful, but I'm having fun. I got a great group of kids, and they're allowing all this to happen. They're sharing. They're showing great, selflessness, and it's been a lot of fun.
I saw you a week ago after a game, and you were asked about going to see your son play, I think the next day up in Massachusetts. For some reason, that really struck me. I mean, in the middle of this incredible run, I know you do that, but it just seemed to be a really nice moment. Well,
this isn't life and death what we're doing, and I have a son that's playing up in prep school up there, and I've been to see him a couple times, and he'll call, can you get up here? And, it's tough because I'd like to be at every game. And this profession that I'm in, I end up dealing with other people's children more than I deal with my own at times. And I got a great wife who, was a great mother, and but it's a hard deal, especially if your son's playing basketball and you're a basketball coach.
What did I'm sure it was special to go see him play, but was it? Could you get away? I know the cameras follow you everywhere you go. That's just part of that comes with the territory at UK.
Yeah, I went. It was up in New York, and my daughters were there. My wife was there, and we watched him. And then after, we stayed in New York City for like 2 or 3 days. It was over Christmas. I gave the kids a Christmas break. That was one time I went to see him. The other was I went to see him up in the Hall of Fame tournament up in Springfield. And that was the one where I told the guys, if you play well, I'm going to go watch my son. If you don't play well, we're all going to practice tomorrow. And they kind of came out and played well. I don't think they wanted to see me.
No, I can imagine. I won't turn this into the life and times of Coach Cal's family, although it is interesting. I mean, you've been asked pretty much every other question about this team, and I thought I would just give you a moment to exhale. But on the subject, obviously 2 games this week, Missouri and Alabama, and the questions are usually the same about being undefeated. But before I even get to that, I know you sent out some congratulations, but in your limited time to see other teams play or to keep up with other schools, your thoughts on Coach K winning his 1,000th game?
Well, it's amazing. First of all, that you could do this 40 years and then do it at a high level for 40 years and then do it through different decades when the game is changing and stay at a high level. My appreciation for him, and I've told him this privately, and I've also told him in front of other people, that what he's done for Derrick Rose and Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins through USA Basketball hasn't gone unnoticed by me. And I really appreciate when you help quote one of my sons, which is what he did through those things. And, you know, it looks like John Wall may have an opportunity at, you know, hopefully I'd love to have half of the USA team being my guys. You know, it's really funny. 2 of our guys are starting in the 2 out of 10 are starting in the All-Star game in the NBA, which is a kind of neat thing. And hopefully 2 or 3 other guys will be in the game too.
Coach, just about where you are right now, it is a grind, to say the least, and the questions about going undefeated are probably not what you want. But talk a little bit about your team. I know we talked before the season, and you were optimistic, but you weren't sure what you would get. What do you have so far?
Well, they've allowed us to platoon. They've allowed us to play a style that's really been, you know, hard-charging, all-out, high energy, without fouls, without going nuts and turning it over. And, you know, because at the end of the day, my job is to teach them how to play basketball where they want to go, which is at next level. If you're playing a rap game, I'm not sure if that translates for them personally at the next level. If you're playing all zone, I don't think that translates. You got to be able to play pick and roll defense. Right now, our team's number 1 in pick and roll defense, or at least one of the best at pick and roll defense. So I think that those are what we're trying to do, teaching them to play in the post. Right now, I told my post players, if you can't score in the post right now in college, how do you expect to go to the next level? You're not ready. You got to be able to score or get fouled in the post if they don't double team. And we're not doing that right now. So those kind of things are what I think my job is with this group. And as we go forward, that's what we're going to stay focused on.
When the questions come up about running the table and going undefeated, hasn't happened since '76, is that something that I mean, you want to be asked that. I mean, who wouldn't want to be undefeated? But does that come up at all after the press conferences within the confines of your team?
Well, I'll give you two situations. I don't remember exactly how many wins it was when I was at UMass, but I believe it was 25, 26, 27. Mm-hmm. They were talking the same way. We lost a home game, and that game, was it lucky? Was it unlucky? What? Tell me. And you look at it, and it all depends on what you make of it. So for us to lose that game, I believe it was to George Washington, we ended up going in the tournament and playing well and getting to the Final Four for the first time in the school's history and haven't been back there since. And we were the number 1 ranked team and ended up playing Kentucky in the semifinals, which was crazy. We had beat Syracuse by 20 earlier in the year, and that's who was in the final game. We should have been in the final game. So what I'm saying is, as much as you think a loss is bad luck, sometimes it's good luck. It just depends on how you deal with it. When I was at UMass, I think we were 25, 26, 27, whatever it was, played Tennessee at home. They beat us. We were up 2 with the ball, fumbled the ball. They shoot a 3 at the buzzer. Were they lucky and us unlucky, or how? Well, it ends up our team goes from that point to another stratosphere. Ends up playing in the final game, up 9 with 2 minutes to go, missed free throws to lose the game. Their team went the other way. They went down. Were they lucky or unlucky? We were playing Indiana a few years ago. We're undefeated at the time. I can't remember what our record was, but we're number 1 in the country. We are up, and all we got to do is foul them. It's, we're going to foul them because we have fouls to give. We don't foul. They make a 3 at the buzzer, and it's on. They get an SB. It's on commercials. They go crazy. Were we unlucky or lucky? Well, that game took us to another level. From that point on, we did not lose again to our conference tournament. And who do we end up facing in the Sweet 16? Indiana. Now, they were unlucky because they had to play us after my team had to watch those commercials all year. They had no chance of beating us. So you look at this season, we may drop one. Maybe it's lucky for us. Maybe it's unlucky. It all depends on how we'll look at it. And so I'm not worried about all that. I'm worried about us getting better. If we're the best version of ourselves, if we can play with the kind of energy and another team goes crazy and plays out of their mind and beats us, we'll move on. I'm not worried about it. Like I said, I've been there a few times as a coach. I'm not fazed by it. I'm not worried about it. I'm not, we're just trying to get better. We had a great practice today, by the way. Great practice. Competitive, great practice.
Coach, it's a treat to have you on. Best wishes, and hopefully we can catch up again if your time permits.
We will do it. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast. Tune into the Paul Finebaum Show every day from 3 to 7 Eastern on the SEC Network or on the ESPN radio app.
Geico presents Strange Saving Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.